Hello, welcome to a new Q&A video. Today we are going to answer all your questions regarding our recent album, Why. We've been collecting questions for a couple of months now, so there's lots to talk about and lots have been submitted. So thanks a lot for everyone who submitted some questions. We might be uploading this video to YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, hello. Usually these videos only go out on our MLT Club, which is sort of our membership area on our website. And all the questions we got today were submitted by MLT Club members. So if you too want to ask us questions and be more involved in the community, get more music and at the same time support what we do, then please consider joining the MLT Club. But today we will just jump into the questions. Let's go. John wants to know, what song did you think would be most popular of Why?
I thought Questionable, which I think it is actually, on YouTube at least, because that's probably the most poppy, catchy song.
Tell me, what's your current occupation? What's your dream vacation? When's the last time you have felt alone?
I thought the most crowd-pleasing song would be Any Other Day. And I think that also is true. Just with knowing our audience and knowing what they respond to, Questionable I thought would be a song that like everyone can appreciate. Not really any divisive thing about it.
Any other day, I would have walked home right away, but some lucky fluke made me stay and instead turned.
And it turns out I think Questionable and Any Other Day are crowd favorites.
Well, on YouTube, I Bought Myself a Politician is also going extremely well, which I didn't necessarily expect.
I bought myself a politician, 'cause I've never said I played fair. They're currently on sale.
I actually expected this one to be way more divisive in terms of feedback that we get, but it's going really well, so that was a pleasant surprise.
Chang wants to know, on your album Why, with songs like Champship, Why, If You Raise Your Head, About Myself a Politician and Make Show that focus on different important issues in the world, did you find yourself wanting to intentionally write some light-hearted, upbeat topic songs like Janitor Joe, Questionable, etc. to balance out the album? Or was that not a concern at all and the songs just took shape naturally? I was always going on about this. I didn't want it to just be a social commentary album and always wanted to like, okay, let's write something a little bit more positive or more like not as deep always, just so it's like there's something for everyone on the album.
But I think we even managed, even things like Questionable, you could say, are social commentary, just in a more whimsical and not as maybe serious sense as maybe Why is. So I think still overall we were able to keep it quite focused on the current world or our thoughts about it, while still keeping the balance right of love songs and some more socially critical songs.
Tim Johnston wants to know, what was the inspiration for If You Raise Your Head? I think that's the perfect example for a song that was inspired by what was going on during especially the last 3 years, so during the whole pandemic and everything and that happened on the world stage.
You say you didn't see that coming. You say that you don't understand.
We just noticed that some people were focusing way too much on what was on their phone screens, what was being told to them through like the mass media, and not really paying attention to what was actually happening within their communities and in the world.
Yeah, so that was the main inspiration for that song.
Tim Arnold wants to know, another Tim, is Paparudi playing bass on Summer Rain and does he play on other songs beside If You Raise Your Head?
Yeah, he plays bass on all the songs, I think, right? Did you record any of them?
No, on this album, Dad plays all the bass, he plays all the keys,
all the string arrangements were made by him, so he really is very involved also in the musical side of the whole record, which we were made up about because we think he always does a great job, also with figuring out the bass lines and the bass melodies and things like that. So
and many of you know that, but we write together, we produce together, we arrange together, and he's very much the George Martin of our little team. Then he writes, the slide guitar and harmonies together on the chorus of Champship are such a cool sound.
Thank you.
What was the inspiration for that song? Once again, it was the last few years.
Yeah, I think
it's very similar to If You Raise Your Head, actually, in terms of subject matter as well. Just not looking up, but in this case, looking down. So it is a similar idea of us basically reminding ourselves to face maybe the uncomfortable truths and not stick with whatever is comfortable and nice and where you feel sort of safe, but taking the jump and maybe digging a little bit deeper and facing things you don't necessarily want to hear.
Disconnecting with what's necessarily the status quo or what's expected of, a good proper citizen, and just kind of trying to think for yourself a little bit. That also ties in. And that's also similar with If You Raise Your Head. So there's a big overlap, I'd say.
Maybe Champship is a bit more introspective, and then If You Raise Your Head is maybe a little bit aimed at the listener.
Yeah.
But we tried not to do that too much.
Yeah, we don't want to get preachy.
We ourselves are figuring everything out, so we never want to come across like we're telling people what we think they should be doing. David asks, in one of your Orange Q&A videos, you said that the resonator guitar used on Waiting for the Waiter was also used on the album we now know as Why. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, to answer this,
it is on Champship.
It is on Champship.
That's what the previous person asked.
Yeah, it's the
Where I can see what it is they're hiding in the dark and deep blue sea.
Then he also writes, on Jenny Tajo, it sounds like you're using flute and sitar. Can you tell us about the different instruments used on the album?
We did play around quite freely with different instruments, maybe more so even than on Orange, although on Orange we also started to experiment quite a bit. But we did like to incorporate new different sounds just to keep it interesting. On Champship, for example, we used the kalimba, which we had never done before.
Want to hear the whispers in the deep blue sea.
So we tried to incorporate things that are just new to us as well. Any other examples?
Yeah, like you mentioned flute or sitar. You sometimes play the flute.
Yes, very slowly, but I got there.
Chris asks, you've said before that one of you comes up with the original idea when you start to write a song. I used to think I could guess the idea man for a Lennon McCartney song, but I have no idea among Wagner. I'll ask about a few.
Okay, let's go.
Janitor Joe. That was my idea. Yeah. If You Raise Your Head. I think Dad's idea. And Any Other Day.
Any Other Day is a fun one because we had the melody. I think Dad came up with he
came up with
chorus.
Just the melody by itself.
So we had and then we tried to find a phrase that would fit within those syllables. And Dad and I went off and tried to come up. We had so many different ideas, but nothing really flowed. I think you weren't involved in this, but in one of the writing sessions, I thought Any Other Day, and I thought of this kind of playing with the idea of coincidence and all that. And I came downstairs to tell Dad, I think Any Other Day would fit really well, and he had the same thing written down in his notebook. So we almost came up with it at the same time, which I think is quite cool.
Let's see if I can find out any of the other working titles. I'm sure there's a notes in my phone somewhere of all the other ideas we had for the da-da-da-da-da melody.
Something that you said. That was it. Something that you said.
That was one we almost stuck with.
And we tried so hard to make that work.
Yeah, but it didn't work.
It didn't work. And then we came up with Any Other Day. And then he also writes, I assume Pretty Little Thing was Neve's idea. You're right. She made us write that song about her.
1, 2. Pretty little thing, you're the talk of town. Yeah, a pretty little...
Okay, next question by Tim. He says, I got some of your lyric scribbles and I wonder which of you wrote them up. I cannot discern your handwriting as to which is Mona's and which is Lisa's.
I thought about this, that you actually don't have a way of telling who wrote what.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll put some examples on the screen and tell you who wrote it.
Yeah.
My handwriting is more bulbous, right? And yours
round
is a little straight. Maybe that's a way to tell it apart. Jim wants to know, what was the inspiration behind the song Why? Was there any specific events that brought about this song? I found this song struck a chord with me having grown up in Northern Ireland. Many of the whys you ask were very relevant to what happened here whilst I was growing up.
Well, I also think... Well, it's very easy to answer. Just the last couple of years and with everything that went down. I mean,
as it shows, these kind of questions are always applicable, relevant. Which is the sad thing, or maybe it's just a human thing.
And to be honest, we could have released this even without
everything that had happened in the last few years. But it felt like Why kind of summed it all up for us, just this feeling we've been feeling for the last few years. And before that as well, but it really just exploded recently and really came to the forefront, I'd say, because you could see the madness in plain sight almost. The time during which we wrote this song, we were sat around the dining table pretty much every night going over these questions. And we did ask also who and what and when and try to figure out, I think like everyone did, what was going on globally in the last few years. But it always boils down to why, especially once you start thinking about the higher ups decisions. So it boiled down to that every single time, and that's where we got stuck in the end. So I think that summed up our feelings about the global situation pretty well. Steve writes, I think your album cover is superb, as are your lyrics on the album. Very thought-provoking and meaningful. I was young at the time when vinyl album sleeves and lyrics were poured over in the late 60s, 70s, and Why is quite fascinating. There is so much going on. It is obvious to me that the theme is man's blindness to his fate and the manipulators of technology, and the need to raise his head and see as the man with the red balloon. Maybe I'm wrong. But without giving everything away, please would you give us some clues and your thought patterns on the artwork? Yeah, I think you were very spot on with what inspired the album and the album artwork as well. How we went about it is basically all of us chipped in, so the two of us and then also Dad and Michaela, we chipped in as to what elements we would like on the album cover, and then as you probably know, Lisa then drew it all on her iPad, right? Yes, with the digital drawing program. So we wanted to have like little nuggets of the different songs and kind of things we wanted to portray and sum up with the album, and that's how it came out. I don't think there's not one single idea that the album cover represents, but it's like little things combined that make up the feeling of Why. Yeah, I worked on the concept, I think, with Michaela the most. So the two of us would think of ways to incorporate as many elements into the album cover as possible, and some of the themes that were represented in the music as well. And then I just mapped it all out, like roughly, and then did my best at painting. I don't draw a lot, so it takes me a lot of time to get to a stage where I'm decently happy with it. But because I think there were so many different elements within the album cover, like it worked. It didn't have to be the most spectacular design in itself, as long as like the message came across. Yeah. And so hopefully I got that right, and with the help of everyone, we made something that represented the insides of the album, the songs. And Steve also mentioned the red balloon, which could represent the guy raising his head and looking over, but it ties in with the Songbird video, for which we used the red balloon. So it's things like that kind of cross-reference all the songs in the album. Mike asks, what was the first song written on Why, and what was the last song? What is your favorite song on the album? Good question. Okay, first song. Let me see the list. I think it was Janitor Joe. I think that was the first one we recorded. Wait, I'll look it up. Right. According to our folder structure, in which we create the folder once we start the recording project, Make Show is number one, because we had a super early version of Make Show that never made it on to the album. Like we changed it so much that it has nothing to do with how it turned out in the end. Give the people, give the people what they want. Everybody know that you do anything. But that's the first song obviously we started working on. And the last song, let's see. Yeah, of course, Pretty Little Thing. Because we added that once we got Neve, our Gosling, and we were almost done with most of the songs. We added that song at the very end as a little bonus. There you go. And our favorite song? I don't really have one. It's not as obvious to me on this album. Yeah, I like them all for different reasons. I do think that the prettiest song is Any Other Day. I just love how it flows and how nice of a song it is. But maybe when it comes to the lyrical content, there's others. Fred wants to know, the final scene of the I Bought Myself a Politician video is with a lot of different characters on the stairs of the Revered Hall. Did you know up front that scene was possible? I guess you did, because you had all the clothes for the different characters. Might even have to lie so that you will let me buy you too. So we actually went to the hall once or even twice before. I think once, yeah. Before we filmed the actual video, and we did take like 360 photos of most of the rooms and try to map out in our head which shots can be done where, and that's also where we came up with the idea of doing this really quite elaborate shot at the end, which took a lot of work to make work, but yeah, we figured it out beforehand. Many people asked how we got that shot, because it is a bit of a trick, a tricky one.
It's quite the undertaking.
And the way we were able to do it is by using a 360 camera. So we had a 360 camera stand in one spot. Then Mona went, it didn't move. Then Mona went and got changed and played all the different characters all along the staircase. And then later we would splice this together, so make one coherent image of
one wall of Monas.
And then we were able to move the camera within that 360 footage, if that makes any sense. So in post-production, we were able to still pan whatever, like the camera, like whatever frame we wanted to show, whatever part of the frame, and that way we were able to animate it while still having so many Monas in the frame.
We did make a behind-the-scenes video for I Bought Myself a Politician, where we showed a little bit, so if you want to see more, then check out that video. We posted it at the time of the shoot. Dale's question is, one of the best aspects of the MLT Club is that it's for members to be members of the club and not a place for social, political or other areas of strident disagreement. It's depressingly easy to find a place for discussions in all caps and excessive punctuation as it is. I wanted to ask about a lyric on the song Why. The first thing that struck me about it, the second, because harmonies, was the lyric, no one left to call out what is wrong if everybody's made to play along. It reflects a view of what is happening in my country that I've had for some time. So I was wondering whether there was anything that inspired those particular words.
First of all, I love that you point out what it feels like to be in the MLT Club. I think everyone's trying to be respectful and listens to other people and isn't, as you mentioned, just shouting their opinions and making everything more divisive.
Yeah.
I think it's because we're all just figuring this out. And even I think through our music, we're trying to show that we obviously have no answers, hence why. But we encourage everyone to just talk and be nice and trying to maybe get a little closer to what answers would be. I love that this is represented in the MLT Club.
Yeah. And you mentioned the lyrics, no one left to call out what is wrong if everybody's made to play along. And I think especially for musicians, that's quite an important line, because music is always, or I think music and art should play the part of minimizing censorship and starting open discussions, starting new ideas and getting people to think. So I think that's a very important line for us as well, and the whole song is.
And again, it brings it back to the discussions that we have seen spring up within the MLT Club and everywhere, basically, where people show respect, is that you can have meaningful discussions and that you can point out what is wrong.
I think there's no other way to get to the truth other than being vulnerable and risking pointing things out that might be uncomfortable. It's a fine line in places like the MLT Club. We don't want to encourage too much just political debate, but I think it's important to just being able to talk. And
it's not so much political, I feel like it's just human discussions and topics that we all care about and that affects everyone.
And the problem of censorship, I think, is only getting worse at the moment. It's not making things better if we just don't allow people to question things and to talk about things. So there was the inspiration for that line. Another one by Chang, and he asks, on the Why album, which song took the longest or was the most difficult or involved to write?
You could argue that Make Show went through so many different versions, so that all in all, it took the longest until it reached its final shape.
Yeah, and I think Why was, the writing process didn't take that long, but the arrangement took a long time. That was mainly Dad's doing, and he went through a lot of different stages with that as well, on where we take it musically, not so much lyrically, because that was relatively quickly. So yeah, those two songs that probably took the longest. Daryl writes a really nice message, and at the end of it he asks, since I'm a huge fan of Joe Walsh and obviously Peter Frampton, the talkbox intrigues me to no end. My apologies if this has already been asked, but I really want to hear your thoughts on this. So he talks about why we use the talkbox specifically in If You Raise Your Head.
We had a talk box. It was sent to us a few years ago by a fan called Larry. So we had it in the studio. We never really used it.
Yeah.
And then we had this song that needed a solo, and we thought, how could we make it a bit more interesting than just writing a normal guitar solo? And the talk box smiled at me, and I thought, hey, why not give it a go?
Yeah, and you hadn't really practiced much.
No,
with
I've
it
never done this before. Dave wants to know, was the title track inspired at all by Pink Floyd's Eclipse?
There is a Pink Floydish element to the song. It wasn't inspired by any particular song, but the whole vibe.
We are aware it has a bit of a Pink Floyd
Quality
feel to it.
And we do love Pink Floyd, so we're not mad about that at all.
John writes, you have spoken about your opinions of the music industry in the past. I was wondering if something new happened to inspire Make Show.
Not anything new or different than what we always thought about that subject. So we just more and more get convinced that being independent is the way to go. And I think the decision to be independent and stay independent just gets reconfirmed to us every single day. And especially at the moment, we really enjoy the freedom of talking about whatever we want and doing our own thing and reaching the people the way we want to. I think it's really paid off, and it'll continue to pay off going forward. So nothing new has happened, but we're just very sure in our decision.
There's so many of the big artists that we watch, and we're like, thank God we are not bound by whatever
they are bound
by. Tobias Kaiser writes, I bought myself a politician is mostly about Bill Gates, correct?
Ooh. And we get a lot of comments like that, and several different kind of people are nominated for who the song is about. I think we'll leave it up to the viewers' own ideas of who it is about. I wouldn't say it's one particular past, but take from the song whatever you will, and
Unfortunately, there's more candidates that this song is applicable to. That was a long one.
Yeah.
Let's see how much we can cut this together and post. You don't have to sit here for an hour listening to us talk.
So thanks everyone for watching and for submitting your question. In the MLT Club, we'll soon pick a new topic for the next themed Q&A. And of course, the next one will be an open-ended, unthemed one. So you can start submitting your random questions for that already. If you are watching on YouTube and you do enjoy these types of videos, then please consider joining the MLT Club. We post these kind of Q&A videos quite frequently. And we interact with all the members. We will answer your questions. You can write us and things like that. We do all sorts over there, from reaction videos to giveaways and obviously a lot more music as well.
Behind the scenes and exclusive duo sessions, things like that. So join us there if you want to. Other than that,
we'll see you soon with a new video. And of course, stay groovy.
Bye.
Bye.